So I'm going to turn it over to you, Nat, as our moderator this evening, since Rosie is your special friend.
Okay. Let us pray. This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in this day. God, we thank you for this opportunity for us to gather together, to share ideas, to encourage one another. We pray that you will continue to lead, guide, and direct us. We thank you for what you have done, what you are doing, and we ask you to lead us and guide us and direct us. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
A new pathway to becoming a pastoral counselor. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We're delighted that you're here. I have the high honor of introducing our speaker, Roosevelt Brown, who is widely known as Rosie. Rosie speaks 9 languages. Pastor, Army, Navy, Doctor of Ministry, ACPE psychotherapy, marriage and family therapy, spiritual integrated psychotherapy trainer, chief chaplain, VA Medical Center, Martinburg, West Virginia, lifelong learner. Rosa, we thank you for coming our way, and we await your presentation. Now, you received the read ahead that we left. All of y'all get that? Okay. There will be, Rosa will begin the presentation, and then there will be a pause. So not to fear, you will have a chance if there's some things that you read earlier prior to coming, or as the presentation goes along, he will pause at a particular point and then allow you to call. So Rosie, it's all yours, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much for the invite, and thank you for the introduction. That's awfully kind of you. I was wondering what you were going to do with that. Okay, so you guys have the handout, so I'm not going to show that. I do like to see people, and I do like to interact with people. I think we gain a lot from that. Today I'm going to talk about, as Nat said, a new way of becoming a pastor or counselor, or really, in former terms, we actually use psychotherapist now. That's the word that the American Association of Pastoral Counselors started using before they disbanded, and they continue to use. Was anybody here a member of AAPC before it disbanded besides Nat? Okay. Okay, we have a few people. So they certainly are going to understand some of the things that I'm talking about with AAPC. I recall when I was completing my doctorate work at Garrett Evangelical, and I was doing my DMin there. And the way they did the DMin program, they combined for those again, especially in pastoral care, along with those doing pastoral counseling. And they would bring in pastoral counselors from the pastoral counselors who were pastoral counselors with their PhDs, who worked at pastoral counseling centers. They would bring them in to do the intensives. I remember back in 2007, maybe 2008, probably 2007. I forget his name now, but he was at a pastoral counseling center in Houston. And he was telling us at the time in 2007 that pretty soon pastoral counselors would be a forgotten profession. At the time, I was getting a degree in pastoral care, and half the class was getting a DMin in pastoral counseling. Well, those who was getting their DMin in pastoral counseling actually were prepared to become professional counselors. They would not only be pastoral counselors, but they also would get the qualifications to become professional counselors. And he was saying that at his particular center, he only had 1 or 2 pastoral counselors on staff. The rest were primary social workers, LPCs, LFTs, who had gotten their professional counseling degree and license, and then had chose to come work at a pastoral counseling center. So that's where I first began to realize that pastoral counseling was, I'm going to say, on the decline. It was viewed differently. It was seen through a different perspective. And I'm gonna go ahead and say that as I talk about the term pastoral counselor now, I'm really talking about pastoral counselors who work and use that role as a profession, not a pastor who's doing counseling.
Right.
So I like to just go ahead from the very beginning, just separate pastoral counselors or pastors who do counseling, as opposed to those who are pursuing their profession on a full-time basis, and that's how they make their living.
Mhm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Would it be okay for us to really have that particular definition? Because when he was talking about pastoral counseling, he was talking about the model that AAPC was using to train pastoral counselors at that particular time. All right. So what I like to do is that I would like to kind of go through a section and talk about a section, stop and pause and have some questions, move to another section, stop and pause and have some questions. And of course, that doesn't mean you can't ask questions from the past, but I found it to be better than trying to do the whole thing and then ask some folks to hold on to their questions. All right, so we have 3 or 4 members of AAPC. AAPC was formed officially back in 1963, and it merged with ACPE back in 2019. At the time, pastoral counseling was defined as a minister who practiced pastoral counseling at an advanced level and integrated religious resources with insights from behavioral sciences. So that was kind of our official definition of pastoral counseling. And in the process of becoming a pastoral counselor, we had a body of knowledge that we used to really train us to be prepared to be counselors that was equivalent to those who got their master's degrees. In 2008, I didn't realize this until I'd done my research. AAPC had a membership of 3,000 pastoral counselors and 100 pastoral counseling centers. So a little less than 20 years ago, that was a pretty big, organization at that particular time. So, and the model that they used to train pastoral counselors was the certification process. You first became certified you became a member, and then you became a pastoral care specialist. And as you moved through the system, you became a certified pastoral counselor. And if you made fellow, by the time you did all the work for fellow, do we have any fellows here? Fellow? Okay. How about a certified pastoral counselor? Were you a fellow,
Scott.
Scott?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Started actually back in the 1970s applied for membership and was invited to become a student member and start with a training piece in Fall River, Massachusetts. And then over the years by I think early 80s became a full member, and then in the early 90s became a fellow. Yeah.
So by the time you actually become a fellow, you actually have done the work equivalent to becoming a professional counselor.
Hmm.
The difference is that you did not have a license.
Correct.
You were certified by the Pastoral Counseling Center that you
Yeah.
worked at.
Yep. Yes.
And then Diplomate was a clinical supervisor,
Hmm.
and they're the ones who did the clinical supervision. I did my work primarily at Tidewater Pastoral Counseling Center. How about some others? Which Pastoral Counseling Center did you guys work with? I saw some members there. Some hands were raised. Which Pastoral Counseling Center did you do some of your work?
Well,
I
some of
guess
the Tidewater as well.
we got Tidewater, okay, and
I was at the Boston Christian Counseling Center when I did a year there at Andover Newton Theological Seminary. So Boston Christian Counseling Center.
Well,
did they classify themselves as a member of AAPC?
Ask that again, please.
Were they with AAPC?
Yes,
They were, okay. All right.
that's where I started. Yeah, I'm not sure. Effie Sidiropoulou, who's ABC, she passed years ago. But that's who was the CPE supervisor, and they moved us towards the AAPC track there.
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Okay. So the decline of AAPC started with the trouble with certifications. AAPC could no longer defend on a legal basis.
Hmm.
When people became certified, they may have had the training, but there was no organizations that were willing to give the insurance and the legal fees involved. Certification was just not the terminology used to actually be able to justify in our society. If you worked at a pastoral counseling center, if you worked at a center, regular counseling center, certifications were not the requirements needed to be able to function and work full time there. Now, of course, there are some people who continue to work without collecting insurance. But for those who wanted to collect insurance and work at different places, they need to have a license and not be certified. So AAPC began its decline. I'm not exactly sure which year. I remember that I was in the Atlantic region of the AAPC. And I remember we had various meetings throughout that time where we were reorganizing our structure financially. And finally, about 2016, 2017, AAPC said that it had reached a point where there was some money, but we could not continue to stay on the same conjecture because we were losing too many members because most people was moving from becoming certified and they were in the process of getting their license to do counseling. So AAPC had to close its doors, and rather than closing its doors, we contacted ACPE and decided that it's better to merge with ACPE. Because we do know that AAPC and ACPE were once one unit. And so back in the mid-60s, one side, they changed directions. AAPC decided to go primarily to training clergy to become counselors, and ACPE moved the direction to become training chaplains. So we kind of went back home when we did that. So there were multiple attempts to restructure, but eventually AAPC just was not getting enough people to actually justify its existence. That's why I stopped. And also the legal implications of certifications not being able to really have the same quality and recognition as one who had a license to do that.
Mm.
So I just want to stop right now and see if there's any questions or any comments.
You can just raise your hand and Rosie will recognize you. Bruce?
I am not a pastoral counselor. And I did a unit of CPE when I was at Andover Newton. And that was about the extent of that. I've been a chaplain in the prison, jail, military, and hospital. And very few places that I had applied to really cared whether you had CPE or not.
Mm.
They were looking to hire clergy people who would be willing to come in and function. And I was in fact in Boston. I was working for a period of time at Peter Bet Brigham, and as a chaplain. And there was no question of are you certified? Are you a CP? Now you got to have 4 units of CPE, but not everywhere, because there's a lot of places that just say, that's fine, you got CPE, that's great. But who's going to pay you? I mean, where are we going to get the money to pay you? Because obviously most hospitals anyway don't happen to have the budget and don't know where to include it. So my question becomes, with all the training that we've got and background and information we've got, I've got a sense of there were many ways to go. I chose mine. But I knew people who were, and I lived here in the South for a fair amount of time, and pastoral counseling was never a big deal, at least in this area anyway. One of the things that I belong to, American Association of Christian Counselors, they're moving in that area now of certifying people as Christian counselors. So how does that meet up with training as a pastoral counselor? Are they the same? Are they different, or what?
I'm going to answer that now. They are different. The American Association of Christian Counselors, they do require you to get a license first, though. You actually need to have a license.
Mm-hmm.
And you usually become a licensed professional counselor, licensed marriage and family therapists, or social workers. And then they also, at that time, join that organization and they become Christian counselor. And most of them already have some type of credentials to become a counselor.
Hmm.
That's my understanding from the Association of Christian Counselors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the merger happened back, I think, in 2019. And that's because the AAPC was not financially able to continue. So the task force got together, and the task force knew that the structure worked well for AAPC, but they knew one thing had to change. So we did stop the certification process, and we decided that all members of the ACP psychotherapists had to be mental health providers also. So you're a mental health provider, but right now within ACPE, if you're a mental health provider and you're interested in integrating spirituality within your counseling field, you're able to do that. Now, I think I want to mention this when, you guys familiar with Loyola University?
Mm-hmm.
Loyola University, I think, when did they stop? It's a 2017, 14, that
Somewhere in there, yeah, because I left in 2010, so, but yeah, sometime after that.
But I remember, so it was a school you went to, and you got a degree in pastoral counseling, and you also met the criteria to get your license as a LPC. And at the time, I remember going to a workshop, sitting next to this young lady, and I was just having a conversation with her, and she said, "I'm not a pastoral counselor. I just came here because they have a good program." So at a point, Loyola was getting people coming to get their license, requirements to get licensed, and they were not pastoral counselors, and they didn't care about the term pastoral counselors. They just knew that Loyola had a good reputation, a good program. They trained people, and they got. This young lady says, "I don't even go to church." She said, "I think I'm a Christian, but but I'm here for the degree, and that's all I'm here for is the degree." And so that was about the time right before Loyola closed. Because that's why folks were going to school. I mean, they had a good program, and many people missed that program. And they, of course, were a training center for APC at one time also. So when AAPC joined ACPE, ACPE formed the Psychotherapy Commission. The Psychotherapy Commission is the one that set the parameters for becoming a spiritual integrated psychotherapist.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's kind of what we don't use the term pastoral counseling. We're psychotherapists, and individuals who come to be part of ACPE are making a commitment for formation, fellowship, and gathering together to learn how to integrate spirituality within their counseling program. Because most counseling programs are not going to have a course that talks about integrating spirituality within counseling. So our goal there is to fill that void of helping counselors learn to integrate spirituality within their counseling process. Okay. So most professional counselors now, they go to universities and they get an advanced degree. But they also go to a university where this university is either KCREP. KCREP is a accreditation program that verifies that that's a good counseling program, and that's for licensed professional counselors. For marriage and family therapists, it's the acronym is COMIF, but it's called Commission for an Accreditation of Marriage and Family Therapy Education. These are the organizations that say to us that those schools are good schools that train people to become good therapists and good counselors. And so now most individuals go to schools like that. It's also good to know that seminaries who train counselors also go by those same, use those same organizations. For example, one that comes to mind is, I think it's Louisville Presbyterian Seminary. They have a marriage and family training program there. And there are other seminaries that's also done that. And I can't think of those off the top of my head right now. The other way of becoming a pastoral counselor is that there are 5 states that license pastoral counselors. Those 5 states are Kentucky, Maine, New Hampshire, North Carolina, and Tennessee. So I'm familiar with Tennessee because I went to school with an individual who actually got his pastoral counseling license from Tennessee. He still had to complete most of the body of work to demonstrate that he had was a counselor, but they also could take courses where they would integrate spirituality within their counseling background. And these individuals are just like in that state, they're just like any other counselor. They have all the same benefits and they have to meet the criteria, except they are licensed as a professional, as a pastoral counselor, rather than a licensed professional counselor or marriage and family therapist. Okay. So if you are interested in still using the term pastoral counseling, those 5 states still accept that. Now, before I move on, so the process to become a psychotherapist within ACPE is that what we invite folks to do is that we have a person who says that I want to become a member of ACPE, and I want to become a psychotherapist with your program. We invite them to go through a 30-hour training program that's based upon the book Spirit in Session. He did a lot of work. Russell, what's Russell's last name?
Tyler.
Russell Seiler, Spirit in Session.
Right.
And so we have a 15-hour program. What you have to do is, first of all, demonstrate that you have a license, or you're in a graduate program pursuing your license to become a counselor, and you're interested in using integrating spirituality within your counseling. So we have spiritually integrated psychotherapy trainers who do a 15-hour block and a second 15-hour block. And we go over the main tenets of spirituality to help them be able to integrate spirituality within their counseling profession. That's what we do now in ACPE. And if you want to continue and become more competent in the area, we also have where you do 20 hours of consultation after you complete that particular coursework. And then once you do that, you meet with some peers, a peer group, and the peer group takes a look at your work. And it's really a consultation. It's not a pass or fail. If you make it through all 20 hours, it's a consultation. And then you're classified as a spiritual integrated psychotherapist, and you're part of our program at ACPE. So we're in the process of recruiting clergy individuals, recruiting folks from various schools. For example, this year, Doug Thorpe and I, Doug is exec director for the VIP Care. VIP Care, that used to be the Virginia Institute of Pastoral Care, and they just call themselves VIP Care now. And Doug and I normally teach 1 or 2 courses a year where we train anywhere from 5 to 10 folks who want to become part of our program. And we have about 10 trainers who are actually in the process of doing that. We have a couple of our trainers who are actually professors at universities, at seminaries, and they actually use that curriculum as part of their coursework. So that's how people pretty much become trained pastoral counselors now. Again, it's those who get licensed as a pastoral counselor from one of those states, or those who go through our program. And there are other options to become a pastoral counselor. One of them is what Bruce mentioned earlier, and I guess they wouldn't call themselves pastoral counselors. The American Association of Christian Counselors, they're not going to call themselves pastoral counselors. They call themselves Christian counselors. But sometimes they do work when other people are looking for somebody who want to integrate spirituality in their counseling program. The College of Pastoral Supervision and Psychotherapy, which is CPSP. Anybody has not heard of CPSP? Okay. All right. CPSP still certify their pastoral counselors the old-fashioned way. But people come into the program at different levels. Some of them actually have degrees and are counselors. Some of them do not, and they get their training from the program. But they don't attempt to certify you to do counseling in the community. Their goal is to help people develop skills, become pastoral counselors. Kind of like what Bruce was saying, you can go work somewhere, you want to enhance your skills, become a pastoral counselor. CPSP still does that. Let's see. Okay, but those are those are pretty much the only ways that I know nowadays to become a pastoral counselor or a psychotherapist, unless they go the old-fashioned way and they just get some mentoring and supervision from their pastor or somebody where they work at or at a hospital.
Hmm.
All right. Any other questions about that process at this point?
We got Jonathan here.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess my question is, the word spiritual has become so broad that I'm not sure when people say they have to include psychologically informed spiritual care or spiritually informed psychological care. At some point, it does seem to the person who's coming to get it as you don't really know what you're getting.
Hmm.
The person's not necessarily in a faith tradition, or any faith tradition. They pretty much can just say, I'm spiritually, I care about meaning and life purpose and connection to things that are bigger, something bigger. And that pretty much is acceptable. It seems to me, I'm a chaplain, so I'm not in the field necessarily of pastoral counseling. But it's confusing to me.
So
What
I invite you to interview your pastoral counselor.
I mean, I work with one. There's a pastoral counselor who works as licensed therapist in our outpatient psychotherapy unit, but he's a pastoral counselor by tradition.
But what I mean by interview, you're right. People from various walk of backgrounds use that term, pastoral counselor, Christian counselor. I
Mhm.
invite you to interview the person to find out who you're getting, so you know who you're getting. Even if you want to refer people, I still invite you to do what we were taught when we went to seminary. Find somebody in the community that you trust, somebody that you know, and then use that person for referrals. Because in our particular organization, and we have to be broad enough to say, I don't think we have a Buddhist yet, but we have to be broad enough to accept folks from different faith traditions. They can no longer just be from the Christian tradition. Even the Judeo-Christian background, we have to accept people from all backgrounds. So I do invite you to really take time to interview and find out. When as a chaplain in Hampton, I worked with Nat at Peninsula Pastoral Counseling Center. It's still called Peninsula Pastoral Counseling Center. And people come there from all walks of life, Christian, non-Christian, atheists, whatever. They come because, again, they know that Peninsula has a good history of helping people, and they have not changed their names. Now, there are a few places that still use the term, Pastoral Counseling Center, like Tidewater Pastoral Counseling Center. I mentioned VIP Care. You may know other places that still call themselves pastoral counseling centers, and people use them. I invite you to take time and please, you're always able to do this in your first session. I want to know who you are. Tell me a little bit about you. What is your philosophy for doing counseling? It's very important to do that. So I do some part-time work with an organization called Spring Health. Spring Health is a secular organization, but when you complete your bio, you actually describe who you are. Most of the people who choose me because I say that I'm a spiritually integrated psychotherapist, and I tell them who I am. I don't wait for them to ask me who I am. I tell them. And they said that one of the reasons we chose you is because you said that you use spirituality within your counseling. And so each one of us have to write a short bio. about who we are as individuals. And I know, most of the pastoral counselors that I know are not working at pastoral counseling centers. Most of the spiritual integrated psychotherapists I know are working within organization counseling centers, but they are identifying themselves as individuals who do traditional pastoral care, or they integrate spirituality within their counseling models, and that's how they get people to come to them.
Rosie, you have a question from Petra.
Okay.
Oh,
Maybe she's muted.
you put in your chat, Petra, earlier?
Yep.
Yeah, go right. Okay,
I have no idea what the life of a pastoral counselor is. I hear history and how to become one, but what is, you know, I have no clue what no, I want to hear I want to get some imagination what a day of a pastoral counselor looks like, and what you encounter in working with people on a daily basis. Some stories.
So, do you have no, when you say you have no understanding of what a pastoral counselor is?
Well, I have some idea, but I want to take some stories, what it is today in 2024, about if I share about chaplaincy, I share my life experiences, and I want to hear the same with you.
Okay, all right. I can do that. I can do that. I have such a wide range that I'm trying to be precise enough um, to talk about the type of issues that people bring to a pastoral counselor. People bring to a pastoral counselor the same issue they bring to everybody else. They talk about troubles in their, for example, today I had a conversation with individuals who's talking about substance abuse, and now substance abuse has just he can't stop drinking. And secondly, I had a conversation today with an individual whose relationship is about to deteriorate, and she doesn't know what to do. She's only been married 3 months, and she's afraid to approach her husband because she's afraid that he's going to say, "Well, this is it. I don't want to stay married to you anymore." So pastoral counselors get those same stories that everybody else gets. Those are two stories that I received today. And the difference is that as a spiritual integrated psychotherapist, and just as a chaplain, I only go so far with people and with how they want to go with integrating spirituality within their own particular issue. For example, the person who came and who talked about his struggles with substance abuse, he doesn't want to include spirituality within our therapy. But the young lady who came in who has trouble in her relationships, she wanted to know, how can my faith help me to deal with this? God, what have I done that how come I got married and 3 months later my marriage it's about to break up? What mistake did I make? And how can I reconcile that? And how can I find meaning and purpose in my life? So those are just two stories that I've had today. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I really would love to hear the particular outcome of what a pastoral counselor achieves in the work in such issues, and also what you are proud of, what you're passionate about in your work, and tell a story about that.
Well, um, uh, those two stories have no outcome. That's just stuff they're dealing with right now. It's the present. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I can't tell you that. For example, I remember when I was working at doing some work at a treatment center, and that person said that I'm really struggling with what I did in the Navy. I'm really struggling with that. And I need to find a way to get forgiveness. I need to find a way to move past that. And so we had psychologists, and we had, because we were a treatment team, and we had other healthcare providers. But he said, I need to talk to someone from a faith tradition. And so they invited me to come by and spend some time talking with this individual to hear what he had done on the battlefield. And he said the same thing to me that he said to the other counselors. The difference is that he said, I want to say it to you because you were a person of faith, that you were God's representative. So I still hold to God is involved in the process of doing therapy. I still believe that God is in the process of working through individuals' lives when they when they open themselves up to allow God to do that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
those kind of outcomes do happen where as a pastor counselor, as a spiritual integrated psychotherapist, those kind of things still occur in the work that I do. For example, as a cognitive processing therapy. Cognitive processing therapy is a evidence-based approach that uses to help people work through traumatic situations. It's called CPT, cognitive processing therapy. I learned how to use cognitive processing therapy. The difference is that when I use cognitive processing therapy, I also include the stories, the thoughts and things that come from a person's spiritual background. For example, I worked with with an individual who was in Iraq, who was a leader for his unit, and he thought that he should have been able to know that there was an IED that kept the other soldiers from getting killed.
Mm.
For some reason, he felt so guilty that they died on his watch. Somehow or another, his vehicle went past and did not hit the IED. The second vehicle hit the IED, and he, for many years, thought that was his fault. He should have done something to stop that. Okay, I work with individuals like that.
Yeah. Mhm.
I work with this guy who was 6 and 7 years old. I'm saying his age for a reason. He's 6 or 7 years old. He was in Vietnam. He came back from Vietnam, and he was with the Catholic faith. And he thought that the church would not accept him because of what he did. For the next 45 years, he did not talk to God.
Mhm.
45 years. He continued to have dreams, nightmares. I use this program called Building Spiritual Strength, where you slowly walk through the process of helping a person identify their own spiritual struggles, work through their spiritual struggles, and find whatever issue they're dealing with God. After 45 years, he finally was able to say, maybe God would have accepted me 45 years ago. I didn't know that.
Hmm.
I just didn't sense that the people at the church would accept me. But now, and also I didn't think God would accept me either. But after going through this groups for the last 8 weeks, I've been misleading myself for the last 45 years. Okay? So that's the type of work that I do as a spiritual integrated psychotherapist. I deal with people's spiritual struggles. This one lady I mentioned been married for 3 months, and then I mentioned this person of Vietnam who's been dealing with this for 45 years. He's finally now beginning to get some sense of peace in his life because he sees God differently. He's able now to actually say a prayer that he couldn't say before. Yeah,
And
so
I
those
will,
things are meaningful.
I will add, Rosie, that in pastoral counseling, it's on a continuum, and we can go biblical to say some plant, some water, but God gives the increase. So if there are people who have contacted a support person beforehand, they're with us, and then perhaps they'll go on with someone else. So it's amazing how it may be after years, as Rosie said, or sometime a person say, you know what, when I came here, I could feel that you didn't judge me. In fact, that's why I introduced myself to some clients. I'm not here to judge you at all. And I had one client to say, you know what, I'm glad you said that, because if I felt you were judging me, I would have walked out. And I said, I would have gladly respected you for that. So again, we look at the continuum of things too. And then let me pause. We got a few more minutes left. Sarah, you have anything? Anyone else? Bruce? Rick.
Rick,
Yeah.
right.
Rick.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, because you are more integrated into the general pool of spiritual of psychotherapists, even though you're a spiritually informed psychotherapist. I'm kind of curious as to how your non-spiritually trained psychotherapists relate to you, whether you see a sense of acceptance or whether there is a sense of resistance, and also the insurance companies that you have to deal with. I'm kind of curious as to whether there's a bias or not.
There isn't a bias because I have a license. I'm licensed by the state of Virginia and licensed by the state of North Carolina. So I have the same license as a secular client. I have the same license as they do. So most of my life is in the military, Navy. I was a Navy chaplain, and then I work in the VA. And the Navy and the VA primarily, they have respect for chaplains and people who integrate spirituality. They do. And so I don't have any problems finding my place with them. And of course, no matter where you go, there are going to be people who don't, believe in integrating spirituality within counseling. And so, for example, within the VA setting, we have to have respect the right for freedom of religion, meaning that if they don't want to see me because I'm a clergy person, they have that option. If you have your license, so we file insurance. I don't file insurance. The people who do the paperwork there, all they want is my license number. They don't ask any of the questions. They just see your license number. And that's true with the people with the pastoral counseling license too. They have a license number, and that number verifies them, and insurance companies don't question that whatsoever because it's a valid license. As I said before, you get those accredited organizations, then they automatically accept you.
Yep.
Does that help answer your question? Okay.
I wanted to ask, so, but a little bit technical, but so could you do a Zoom intervention for somebody that lives in Mississippi or
Oh.
some other place and still be reimbursed and covered?
No,
Yes.
no.
So
You can only work with people within your state.
within
For
your state.
example, the organization that I work for now,
Mhm.
they only send people to me in Virginia and North Carolina.
Got it. The other thing I wanted to say was, back in the day when I was going through all of this, APCE were the people that did CPE. That's all I knew. That if that was that there wasn't anything else. That was what they did. And so I think
We only a very small portion of ACPE. ACPE still primarily does CPE. We're just a little section of ACPE. It's a place, it's a home for us to have the organizational structures that we need to actually still have psychotherapists, spiritually integrated psychotherapists. So by no way are we taking over ACPE.
no, actually, no. So, I mean, I'm just, you know what, I'm too old, so I'm brutally honest. I would never want to become an APCE supervisor for CPE because I personally think that it could, and I did it a long time ago, but it was not the healthiest. I don't think it was the healthiest process. So I'm hoping.
And you know, right, yeah, and I'm not
It
here to defend ACB supervisors, and they have changed their program because there has been some troubles with ACPE programs. Yes, they have been, right.
That's good. As I said, I'm older, even older than I look. So I did a long time ago in a land far away. But it was, yeah, never wanted to be one of those.
Well, I'm not a ACB supervisor. I'm a ACB psychotherapist. I'm a psychotherapist. And we have our own commission that's part of ACPE, and we answer to each other. We have some leadership over us, and we answer to that leadership.
One other quick question, and I'll shut up, is could the resource that you mentioned before, the book or the Spirit in Session or something, would you put
Yes,
that
right.
in the would somebody who knows what they're talking about put that in the chat so I can write it
Right.
down?
You
Thanks.
know how to spell Russell's last name, Nat?
Sieler, I believe. Russell Seiler in North Carolina.
Right, yeah.
And it'll come up. Spirit in Session is the book. And so that should populate for you.
Let me see how that. Okay. Yeah, Spirit in Session.
Yes.
I just a quick comment. When I was doing my CPE training, one of the supervisors said the main difference between you walking into the room and a psychologist or a counselor is the projections that are put on you because of your title. And I think that's true for pastoral counselors too. There's a lot of projections that people, they hear the word pastoral and it raises different discussion points than if they didn't hear it.
Right.
Well, in my context, when I was in the Navy, I used to find myself as chaplain / pastor counselor. That was my title, chaplain / pastor counselor. Now, with this organization I work for, I just find myself as a licensed marriage and family therapist who use spiritually integrated psychotherapy. I don't use the term, I don't use the term pastoral counselor, because most people don't know what that term means. Because we not only see, well, especially younger people, the younger folks don't know what it means, more so than say middle-aged people. But so when you say that you are a therapist, you say that you're a counselor, and matter of fact, like I say, they look at your short bio and they look at it and then they pick you. That's how a lot of organizations they pick. I know they pick me because of my bio, because they don't know me. They see the picture and they see the bio about why I'm doing what I'm doing. But I like to, I believe in a collaborative approach. So I began by, first of all, telling them a little bit about me, who I am. And if I'm not a good fit for you, hey, let's find somebody who is a good fit for you. So I do use that process there to kind of help ease some of the stigma and ease some of the ways how you can actually, talk to a pastor, as opposed to a counselor, which is different.
Hey, Sarah, I want to honor our time. Sarah, do you have any closing words for us? And thank you again, Rosie, for joining us.
Thank you, Nat, and thank you, Rosie, for a really informative session for many of us here. And thanks to those of you who jumped in and asked questions and spoke as well and interacted with Rosie. I think that made it a very rich session. And so I just want to express my personal thanks for all of it. And I think God did shine his blessing upon this evening as you prayed in the beginning, Nat. So I say amen to that.
Amen. And thanks, everyone.